As much as I have been criticizing Bushiroad a lot in terms of their card design, I gotta admit, some of the mechanics they introduced during V era are really fun.
No, he's got a point.
And one of the weirdest mechanics they decided to release was the gauges. Strangely enough, gauge mechanics actually is well received by all the players, as it's a kind of mechanic where if played right, it will be extremely devastating, as you have seen with Tajikase Arm Gauge with cards like Anger Blader and the more recent one, Raptor Colonel. However, there is another type of gauge mechanic in the clan like Genesis, which is Divine Gauge, and it was quite underwhelming in my honest opinion, thanks to the fact that most of the support were kind of like just pushed to Valkyrian support or the G Legacy support. However, thankfully there is one particular archetype decided to take this particular mechanic as their own main mechanic, and they make it pretty damn good, and that is Regalias. So before we dig any deeper, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, consider like, share and subscribe to this channel, and ring that bell to keep up with all the notification. I'm trying to hit to 1,000 subs by the end of this year, so any subscribers or any help is really appreciated, and for those who already done so, thank you so much, and seriously it's free, so I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Let's start off with the only grade 1 Regalias unit that's currently available based on the time I'm recording, Oblation Regalia. Wow. It has two abilities. Auto, when it attack or boost, you may put a card from your soul face down as a Divine Gauge for this unit, and act once per turn, discard one of these unit Divine Gauge, soul charge 3, and if you have a Vanguard with Regalia in its name, retire this unit and then counter charge 1. Although not exactly the crux of the deck, the fact that it has ability to equip itself with Divine Gauge is always appreciated, and at the same time it is also quite a resourceful card as it helps to soul charge 3, setting up for other Divine Gauges, and a counter charge 1 which you may or may not use most of the time. As the deck is not that counter blast heavy, but the fact that it is there is always really appreciated. Then we have Ordeno, which despite doesn't have a Regalia in its name, it is a Regalia support. When this unit is drawn upon, you may call this card to Regard Circle, so just typical 4-star foreigner effect. Then we have Auto, at the end of the battle, this unit boosts a unit with Regalias in its name. Put this unit into your soul and draw a card. Well, this is just a quick setup for all the Regalias Divine Gauge. Itself will become a Divine Gauge and it trades itself for a draw, which is really appreciated. Nothing much to say about this card, but it just helped to set up everything that needed to be done. Next up, we have, in my opinion, one of the two most important cards in Regalia decks at the moment, and that is Regalia of Fate. None. Act Vanguard or Rearguard once per turn, counter blast 1, draw a card, and choose one of your Rearguard. You may put a card from your soul face down as Divine Gauge for that unit. If you put a card, soul charge 2. And then another ability, auto Rearguard once per turn. At the end of the battle, it boosts a unit with Regalias. Discard a card from your hand and one of your this unit Divine Gauge. Stand the unit that was boosted, and that unit get power plus 10k and drive -1 until end of turn. Do note that this -1 also apply on Rearguard, so if you manage to get over trigger, it will have one drive less. What makes this card so important is both of its ability. One ability helps to set up Divine Gauge, and another ability is actually an offensive part of the deck, ability to restand any Regalia units. As long as this unit can boost, you technically get a free restand that doesn't really cost a lot, and that plus 10k is always appreciated for the deck that doesn't really give a lot of power. However, how are you going to unlock that boost ability, you ask? Well, we'll go back to this unit very shortly. Demon Exorcism Regalia Truth has ability to equip itself with Divine Gauge when placed on Regard Circle, and at the end of the battle when attacked or boosted, it has ability to transfer every single gauge that it currently has to another unit and then put this into soul to get a card. Well, it's kind of obvious that it's actually an Ordeno with grade 2 slap on it and has a Regalia in its name.
Nice.
But it is still a very useful card as it helps to equip Gauge on its own, so you don't really need to worry too much about this card, and at the same time give you free draw, so it's always nice to have. And then we have the latest addition to the grade 2 roster of Regalias of Vow, Ruri Jisa. Try saying this 10 times and tell me whether you can pronounce the name properly or not. So it has two abilities. When this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, counterblast 1, look at top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card among them, call to Vanguard Circle, and then shuffle your deck. If you call a Regalia, choose up to one of your red cards, equip them with Divine Gauge. And then auto, when placed on Vanguard Circle, choose up to 2 cards with Regalias in its name and put them into your soul. Well, this card is also another resource card, but in a really good way. For one, it helps to excavate, and as we know by now, excavate is one of the best way to get cards in Vanguard. And you also have to set up the gauge as well. And its regability is not bad as well. Access card from the drop zone is always appreciated, and more so is always appreciated for the deck that require a lot like Divine Gauge. Do note that this card does call any unit, so that you can kind of mix in some of the more generic support of Genesis as well, so this is a huge plus. Now let's move on to the grade 3s, and starting off with, in my opinion, the most important card pairing with the non when it comes to the crux of this deck, Cosmic Regalia CEO Yggdrasil. Constant Vanguard or Regard, all of your Regard with Divine Gauge get boost, and if this unit is on Vanguard Circle and it is during your opponent turn, those Regard cannot be affected by your opponent card effects. And act once per turn as Vanguard or Regard, counterblast 1, search your deck for up to 1 Regalia of Fate non, call it to Regard Circle, shuffle your deck, choose up to 2 of your Regards, and put up to 1 card from your soul face down as Divine Gauge for each of them. The common trend of grade 3 Regalias in general is the fact that it gives additional benefit for those who actually have Divine Gauge. In this case, boost if you have Regalia anywhere on the field, and complete resist if you put it on Vanguard Circle. What the fuck? And do note that this is one of the best abilities so far, as it does negate mass retiring or any type of control. And its second ability is just help to set up for that very easily, and it just call up to one of the base card of the deck, non. And not only that, it helps to set up a gauge for 2 of the units on the field. And do note that you can equip a gauge to Vanguard itself, meaning that you can give the resist to Vanguard as well. Then we have Regalia of Wisdom Angelica. Constant of your Regard with Divine Gauge cannot be chosen by opponent card effects and gets power plus 5k. And as Vanguard, when it attacks, choose up to 2 of your Regards, put up to 1 card from your soul face down as Divine Gauge for each of those units. And at the end of your opponent turn, discard 5 Divine Gauge and heal a card from your damage zone. This is where your Divine Gauge build up is actually going to pay off, as you literally heal 1 damage, ignoring the damage count at the moment. However, what makes this card not so good and least favored among the 3 is the fact that it does have a very bad second effect, as it does require to attack to equip 2 gauge, a timing that not very good to equip at the moment, because you want a gauge to be equipped to non as early as you can. However, it still have a second base resist type ability for your Regard, as it does still weak against the mass retiring, but those are pretty rare in Vanguard, so you don't need to worry too much. And plus 5k is always helpful against XL deck, as you know, those get bulk a lot. And then we come to the last unit from the Regalia current roster, and that is beloved Regalia Freak. Constant on Vanguard, all of your Regard with Divine Gauge cannot leave the Regard Circle by your opponent card effects and get plus 5k. Act once per turn, counterblast 1, look at top 5 card of your deck, choose up to 1 card among them, call to Regard Circle, shuffle your deck. And if you call Regalia, choose up to 2 of your Regard, equip them with Divine Gauge. And last ability, as Vanguard, at the beginning of your turn, if your opponent damage zone has 4 or less cards, discard 5 Divine Gauge, choose one of your opponent Vanguard and deal 1 damage. This is by far currently the best right target for Regalia, as it helps to populate the field, set up the gauge, and at the same time it does help to deal damage if needed too. However, it does have the weakest resist type of ability to give to the Regard, though the 5k is still retained, that's why it's still preferred over Angelica. And the most important part about those 2 units is that it only have Vanguard effect because you can leave it on the Vanguard Circle to have your Yggdrasil be called to Regard Circle for setting up the board itself. V Regalia can kind of be summed up in 2 particular phrases: build up Divine Gauge and reap the benefit. Regalia makes sure that you benefit from equipping Divine Gauge to your Regards, and not only it helps the deck offensively, it also helps the Regards in terms of protection as well, as it does have a lot of resist effect. And not only that, the deck can restand very constantly without the need of having opponent to be at the grade 3 at the start of the game. The deck also gains a decent amount of resource through cards like War, Non, and Ordained O to defend yourself, and of course setting up the soul for Divine Gauge. Regalia is also belong to Genesis, which is under a Force clan, which is always a beneficial regardless of whether which clan you're in, as long as you have a Force marker. But the deck does have some issue. The first and foremost is that it is extremely key piece reliant, and it does require Non and Yggdrasil to be really aggressive both defensively and offensively. Also, on another note, the deck does need quite a lot of resource to set up for the gauge and for defense and everything, so there's a probability of decking out as well if you're not being careful with the way you earn your resource. And here's my deck list for Regalia. I decided to play 4 of almost everything, as those are pretty damn important, except for Angelica, as you do already have Freak to kind of do the setup, and it's kind of better card to play as it helps to set up the field offensively. So I decided to play Skull, as I do play a good amount of grade 3s in my deck, so filtering out grade 3 early is always help. When it comes to trigger lineup, you can go for more draws, or if you want to go Unga Bunga, you can go for more crit as well, but I think 4 draws PG is always optimal for any Force clan, as you do not have a lot of defense outside the offense. Unfortunately, Genesis does not have a lot of generic support to really take advantage of, but there are still a few strong options that you can replace Skull to play something else instead. One of them is of course Witch of Frog Melissa, which helps to kind of remove the opponent board completely, Glefnir for a good attack and also some hand toolboxing, and of course we need to talk about the Fenrir common support, and I think that's playing Fenrir with Regalia kind of works to an extent if you're not too focused on using Nord itself. To conclude, Regalia is definitely a really powerful deck now thanks to the latest support. However, it is slightly weaker than Prism, as Prism still had a stronger game when it comes to Rearguard calling and resource gaining, in which Regalia decided to sacrifice some of it for a very good effect protection and kind of like anti-Excel to an extent. And that's all I have for today, guys. If you guys have any comment on the deck list or my thoughts about Regalias, do leave down in the comments below, as I'm interested to see what you guys think of. And of course, if you guys have any suggestion on which archetype I should be covering next, do leave down in the comment as well. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, and this is McMegane signing out.